The corridor behind the Combat Readiness Facility carried the heavy hum of a long day winding down. Overhead, fluorescent lights flickered, casting uneven shadows along the walls. Somewhere deeper in the building, gear lockers clanged shut, and the sharp scent of weapons oil hung thick in the air. Lieutenant Commander Avery Holt stood alone beside a stack of crates, clipboard in hand, her plain olive shirt blending her into the dim background. She had barely taken a step when 3 Marines cut off her path, boots scraping against the floor. Corporal Blake Mercer moved closest, chin lifted in practiced confidence. Behind her, Lance Corporal Cade shifted to block her retreat, while Private Ryder Kincaid drew a dull training blade and slowly dragged it down the seam of her shirt, deliberately slow, deliberately demeaning. Somewhere behind them, a voice muttered, "She doesn't belong here." Avery didn't flinch. She didn't step back or change her stance. She simply lifted her gaze, voice calm and steady. Step back. They didn't move. The 3 men stood their ground as if the corridor were theirs to control. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe to Military and Veteran Stories so you never miss these real stories of courage. And tell us in the comments, where are you watching from today? Long before these 3 Marines chose the wrong corridor and the wrong woman, Lieutenant Commander Avery Holt had mastered the art of disappearing. She moved through bases like a shadow on a wall, present, silent, unremarkable. Exactly how Naval Special Warfare preferred her now: low visibility. He valued quiet. She hadn't always been that way. During her years at Naval Special Warfare Training Detachment West, her voice carried across sand and surf, calling out times, corrections, and brutal truths to candidates who believed push-ups were the worst pain they'd ever face. Her name once held weight in after-action briefs and whispered conversations in team rooms. She had never been loud, but she had been known. Then a forward deployment went sideways. A vehicle meant to clear a route rolled over a hidden explosive. The blast nearly killed her. Metal tore through her leg and shoulder. The world went white, then dim, then silent. Surgery after surgery, months of rehab, and painkillers that never quite worked followed. While she navigated hospital wings and physical therapy, the pipeline moved on. New instructors rotated in. Old ones rotated out. Her name slipped from rosters and whiteboards, replaced by people who had never heard her call cadence on a freezing pier by the time she walked without a limp. She existed only as a faint memory. When she returned to duty, they didn't send her back to the surf shouting drills. She was assigned to evaluation roles, quiet work, vital work, but invisible. She read reports, found training failures, and told commanders where readiness was bleeding. At the Combat Readiness Facility, most people only knew her name from the bottom of an email. When she checked in at the front desk, the young Marine glanced once at her plain shirt, her neat bun, and her lack of visible insignia. He stamped her visitor badge without really seeing her. She clipped it on and didn't correct him. Her job required camouflage. She wore no pins, no ribbons, no patches, nothing to reveal who she had been. Naval Special Warfare wanted authenticity around her, not rehearsed respect. Appear ordinary. People revealed themselves. Most Marines looked at her and saw admin, logistics, maybe a contractor doing inventory. They noticed the clean clipboard, the tidy handwriting, the quiet eyes, and wrote their own assumptions. She let them. Every morning, she walked the catwalks above the drill floor. Watching squads run close-quarters drills and live-fire simulations, with her hands loosely folded over the clipboard, she looked like someone checking boxes. Only her stance betrayed the truth-balanced feet, weight light, always ready. Every room she entered, she mapped by instinct. Corners, exits, blind spots, sight lines. Too many rooms had taught her that hesitation could kill. Briefings ran long. Officers introduced her politely, mentioning her mandate to optimize training. None noted that she had helped write some of the standards they now quoted in her temporary office. Only one personal item disrupted the plain professionalism: a small canvas pouch holding a cluster of dog tags, edges worn smooth. Marines from 3rd Recon? She had trained them through a brutal winter. Some had never made it home. Their families received folded flags and carefully worded casualty reports. but not the real stories Avery carried alone. When paperwork blurred and decisions felt abstract, she pressed her thumb to the cold metal and remembered why details mattered. Around the facility, speculation spread quickly, messy, and mostly wrong. A few senior NCOs noticed details: how she moved, how she listened, and quietly noted she wasn't what she appeared. But rumors never outpaced the lazy assumption that she was just a clipboard carrier. Younger Marines joked about it openly. Voices lowered just enough for plausible deniability. She heard more than they thought. Years of combat had trained her to catch whispered cues the way others caught shouts. There were signs small, subtle, that set her apart if anyone had known what to look for. She didn't flinch at sudden gunfire. She tracked angles instinctively. A badly shouted command tightened her jaw before she relaxed again. In the mess hall, she took the back corner, never giving up her line of sight to the door. When groups moved close, she shifted only an inch but kept her lane clear. Older senior enlisted sometimes paused when they passed her, searching their memory. One reconnaissance gunnery sergeant gave her a nod carrying far more meaning than his polite ma'am. He recognized her name from a roster that mattered. But most never connected the dots. They saw only the version of Avery Holt standing before them. Quiet, plain, without rank. A desk worker. Far from the grit and danger they bragged about in the barracks. She understood their assumptions. The military trains people to read uniforms as shortcuts. Strip the insignia away, and most saw nothing. She could have corrected them with a single sentence. She never did. Misjudgment gave her cleaner intel. Beneath her plain shirt, scar tissue tugged whenever she lifted her arm to hide a reminder of the day everything changed. Physical therapy had taught her to move again, shoot again, climb again. It had not taught her how to forget radios going silent when they shouldn't. This assignment was just another task on paper. Another evaluation. But every sloppy cornering technique she saw, every overconfident maneuver, every careless moment pulled her back to that pouch in her drawer. The dog tags pressed together like quiet voices, asking whether she was paying attention. She paid attention. She watched leadership styles, training habits, who deferred to whom, who blocked hallways with their bodies. Her notes filled with more than numbers. So when 3 Marines finally chose the wrong corridor and the wrong woman, Avery Holt already knew this place better than most who had worn its patch for years. They saw plain clothes, a neat bun, and a clipboard. They never noticed how she kept one shoulder toward open space, how every room she entered had an exit plan in her mind. It began small, like most bad habits. A stray comment in the chow line. Smirk. A nickname born from boredom. She spotted it early. Let it play out. People reveal more when they think no one's watching. The first time Corporal Mercer brushed past her, it seemed almost accidental. In the hallway outside the simulation bay, he cut across her path, knocking a pen off her clipboard. It clattered across the floor. He didn't look back. The Marines behind him grinned. Later, she heard the nickname echo behind her. Paperwork lady's back. Someone's got to count our push-ups. Soft laughter followed her down the concrete. She didn't turn. She simply noted the voices, the time, the unit patches. It wasn't the first time a female officer without visible rank got dismissed. It wouldn't be the last, if it had stopped at name-calling. She would have ignored it, but Corporal Blake Mercer didn't leave it there. On paper, he was everything a recruitment video wanted all. Strong, clean record, combat experience. In person, he walked like he owned every hallway. Cade followed closely, lighter, sharper, reactive. Kincaid hovered on the edge, eager to belong, easy to influence. They weren't the worst she'd seen, but they were exactly the sort she monitored. In her second week, she organized training helmets outside the armory, tagged aligned, staged for inspection. She did it herself to see who respected gear when no one watched. When she returned from her office, 2 helmets were gone. The rest were kicked out of alignment. Her inventory sheet was half torn and scribbled over. Across her tidy columns, someone had written, "Ask paperwork lady. She counts everything." A crude smiley face signed it. She didn't storm into a squad bay. She didn't slam the helmets back into place. She simply took in the information. Instead of reacting, she methodically picked up each helmet, realigned the row, and tucked the altered inventory sheet into a manila folder she kept in her bag. Paper preserved patterns better than memory ever could. Whoever had done it had gone out of their way to mock her role, hoping any passerby might witness it. It didn't take long to discover who took pride in their mischief. Later that evening, near the vending machines by the stairwell, Kincaid's voice rang out first, sharp with nervous bravado. "You should have seen her face when she saw the sheet," he said. "I thought she was going to write a 10-page report." Mercer's reply came slower, edged with amusement. "Relax. Admin people live for that. Give them something to type about," Cade added. "She's probably never been outside the wire. Clipboard is her weapon." Avery stepped around the corner, directly into their line of sight. She didn't quicken her pace or slow it. She just walked past, eyes forward, badge displayed clearly against her shirt. For a brief moment, the three froze. Kincaid flushed slightly, but Mercer's lips curved into the beginnings of a challenge. Just as she was nearly past, he drawled, "Ma'am, need us to sign anything? Or just here to watch the real work again?" The stairwell echoed the words back, dull and hollow. Avery paused, turning just enough to meet his gaze. His tone balanced between respect and mockery, daring her to notice. "Just here to make sure the real work sends everyone home alive," she replied evenly. "No bite, no apology. Carry on, Corporal." She felt their eyes follow her as she walked away. Cade snorted quietly. "Bet she Googled that line," he murmured. Mercer said nothing, though the sound of his boots planting wide betrayed his territorial instinct. Their arrogance only grew with their assumption she would do nothing. In after-action review rooms, Avery would lean over shoulders, checking times and hit percentages. Most Marines automatically made space, angling so she could see. Mercer deliberately blocked the view, elbow brushing across the table, his tone joking. "Sorry, ma'am." Tight space. Few who understood the game kept their eyes on their forms. When Avery first reached for a training carbine, Cade stepped in front of her, hand braced casually. "Those are checked out under Sergeant Rear's name. You might want to ask him first." Avery held his gaze, letting him know she understood her authority fully. The obstruction wasn't about rules. It was about reminding the room who they thought held power. "I will do that," she said quietly. "Step aside, Lance Corporal." He shifted, rolling his eyes toward Mercer as if to say, "See? She talks like a memo." Whispers followed her out. "Paperwork lady on patrol again. Maybe she's writing us all up for walking too loud." Laughter drifted thin and brittle through the hall. Some Marines glanced, uncertain whether to be amused or uneasy. Most returned to their forms, choosing the safer path of silence. That subtle avoidance was harder to watch than outright disrespect, the way people looked away, letting minor bullying slide, failing to see where it could lead. One afternoon, Avery sat reviewing training logs. Pages should have been neat, sequences of times and performance notes orderly. Instead, she noticed discrepancies, times scratched out, SLOW numbers inserted, needs improvement in handwriting that didn't match the rest. Signatures repeated. Mercer, Cade, Kincaid, acting as squad leaders. Their edits elevated themselves while suppressing others' performance. Promotions and deployments followed these numbers. She took the logs to a mid-level captain overseeing the rotation. He skimmed, frowned, shrugged, and handed them back. Sometimes corporals cleaned them up after the fact. Different handwriting, same results. "Don't worry," he said. He missed the deeper pattern between ink and behavior, or chose to ignore it. Avery left with the logs, passing Mercer and Cade in the hall. Mercer's eyes flicked to the stack. Big stack. "Need help carrying all that knowledge, ma'am?" Cade snickered. Kincaid watched, uneasy. Avery tucked the papers under her arm. "I've carried heavier," she replied, letting the words slide past, unnoticed. In the training bays, the mockery escalated. During close-quarters drills, she observed from corners with her clipboard, while Mercer loudly explained the room. "This is a room. We clear it. Make sure the bad guys don't stay," Cade chimed in, swinging his rifle theatrically. Avery tracked weapon discipline, foot placement, and finger position on the trigger. Even amidst the joke's old instincts reminding her how minor lapses could become dangerous in the gym, She quietly completed pull-ups, catching Mercer and Cade's glances. "Not bad for admin," Mercer said. Cade clicked his tongue. Others looked, then looked away. No one intervened. Avery noticed patterns beyond herself, how the trio crowded younger Marines in the chow line, used their posture and proximity to intimidate, and shaped interactions subtly to assert dominance. One evening, she saw Kincaid block a female corporal's path. "We'll check your log later," he said, his tone implying authority, not offer. The corporal forced a laugh and moved past, and Avery filed the moment away. It wasn't about a few snide remarks. It was a methodical shrinking of space and influence. The final clue came from deployment rosters. Avery's assignment included evaluating who went where. Scrolling through names and metrics one night, she noticed irregularities. Strong performers ranked below average ones with ties to Mercer's squad. Comments like lax initiative misaligned with real effort. Tracing edits led to the same trio. They weren't just harassing Hurd. They were manipulating deployment data, affecting real assignments, risks, and lives. The evidence surfaced subtly. On a Tuesday morning, a sleeve slid up, revealing a scar on her forearm, jagged and healed, a silent story of metal and fire. Cade saw it first, then looked away. Mercer smirked. Kincaid pretended nothing happened. Later, Avery's notebook revealed a folded cloth tab with a faded, angular insignia. Cade glimpsed it, but she closed the notebook before he could confirm. No one dared ask. Even indirect acknowledgement spoke volumes. Sergeant Renner, normally terse, paused and spoke precisely. "Ma'am, Roger, you're last." Full correct phrasing. No sarcasm, the three Marines noticed, confused by the unusual formality. But Avery didn't react. During a midweek fire alarm drill, while others shuffled, grabbed drinks, or dragged their feet, Avery moved with calm precision away from choke points, scanning, instructing quietly. 2 Marines followed her direction before realizing it. A new recruit, Celeste Moreno, instinctively moved close, recognizing safety in her presence. Celeste watched Avery daily, not to mock, but to learn, breathing steady, never stepping back, assessing terrain, calm in chaos. On Thursday, Avery signed an evaluation sheet at the admin office using only her initials, L.C. Holt. Celeste read them carefully, whispering the letters under her breath, unaware of their significance. But storing them in memory, even the smallest details revealed clues. Avery opened locker doors lightly with her fingertips, inspecting hinges without drawing attention. When a rifle sling slipped and the buttstock thudded against the concrete, her reaction wasn't surprise, it was memory speaking silently. When a safety brief overlooked movement angles, she jotted them down quietly. Gradually, more Marines began noticing fragments that didn't add up. One evening, Sergeant Renner called across a briefing table, loud enough for the room to hear, "Ma'am, do you want the advanced movement roster sent directly to your clearance inbox?" The room paused for barely a beat, but it was enough for Mercer, Cade, and Kincaid to realize something didn't fit their assumptions. Support staff didn't get clearance inboxes. Kincaid frowned. Mercer forced a laugh. Avery's response was calm. "Yes, end of day is fine." Later, Cade cornered her in the hallway, attempting to read her posture again. "Must be nice," he muttered. "People treating you like you outrank everyone in the room." Avery met his gaze, not aggressively, but with a quiet assessment. "It isn't about rank," she replied, then walked away. The truth lingered, unclaimed, visible only to those perceptive enough. The scar on her arm, the faded cloth tab, the instinctive command in drills, the initials that carried silent weight. Celeste Moreno observed everything, storing each fragment not because she understood its full meaning, but because she sensed the foundation beneath it. And when pressure came later, when danger arose, Celeste would recall every unspoken lesson, every moment Avery stayed composed, didn't defend, didn't react, she simply remained steady. The moment arrived on an ordinary day. Fluorescent lights hummed, ventilation rattled. Boots scuffed along a narrow corridor lined with stacked crates and taped inspection forms. Avery was leaning over a rack, noting serial numbers on radios awaiting calibration. When she sensed 3 sets of footsteps pivot sharply behind her, intentional, not coincidental. Mercer's voice came first, polite but laced with mockery. "Lost again, paperwork lady? This part of the building has real equipment." Cade stepped forward, arms folded, blocking the path. Kincaid hovered behind, drumming his fingers, half laughing, half waiting. Avery straightened, holding her clipboard at her hip. "I'm finishing an equipment trace," she said calmly. Mercer snatched the pen from her clipboard, spinning it like a toy. "Relax. We're just checking. Can't have civilians touching deployment gear." Cade moved closer. Kincaid closed in. The corridor shrank by inches. "No problem," Avery said quietly. "I'll be finished in a moment." Then Cade drew a training blade, a rubber edge, molded sharp enough to catch seams, and traced it along her shirt. The fabric tore audibly. Humiliation disguised as a joke. Avery paused, letting them act, giving them space. Cade lifted the blade higher. That was the signal. Avery shifted, one heel anchored, shoulder lowered, lined, steady. Not fearful, not defensive. She placed her clipboard on a nearby crate, hands relaxed. The trained would recognize the tell. Mercer and Cade didn't. With a subtle motion, she guided Cade's arm, redirecting the blade harmlessly to his own side. No force, no aggression, complete control. Cade stumbled, bewildered. Mercer moved forward, grabbing her shoulder. Avery simply adjusted her center of mass. One step, one pivot. Mercer lost balance. She steadied him just enough, then stepped away. Cade reached for her elbow. She guided him to the floor. No force, no injury. Silence fell, not the fake kind, but real. A young recruit, Celeste Moreno, exhaled softly. She understood instantly what the others hadn't. This wasn't luck or brute strength. Avery retrieved her clipboard, calm, collected, leaving Mercer, Cade, and Kincaid frozen in disbelief. 2 hours later, the story spread quietly across the base. By evening, the 3 men masked embarrassment with sarcastic humor, but the silence around them betrayed the truth. The revelation wasn't loud. It was understated, almost casual, but undeniable. A dry briefing room smelled faintly of paint and overbrewed coffee. Avery was already there, clipboard in arm, scanning projected data. Mercer, Cade, and Kincaid entered, carrying forced composure. Then Master Chief Rowan Hale stepped in. Conversations died instantly. He wasn't the highest-ranking officer, but people straightened at his presence. Silver beard, pale eyes, voice shaped by decades of experience, his reputation preceded him. His gaze settled on Avery with unmistakable recognition. "You 3, he said quietly, pointing. "Just tried that with Lieutenant Commander Hall." Mercer opened his mouth. Cade blinked. Kincaid paled. Hale didn't need to move. The weight of his presence was enough. He stood before Avery and saluted, not casually, not perfunctorily, but fully, professionally. Avery returned it properly. "Not for show." "For anyone unaware," Hale said, voice sharpened. "Lieutenant Commander Holt evaluates instructors at Naval Special Warfare West. She shapes deployments, oversees cross-team exchanges, and has trained many of your squad leaders. She doesn't owe explanations for being here." The room shifted. Silence held, taut and deliberate. Avery simply moved her clipboard and began the briefing. Authority no longer whispered, it was acknowledged. The following morning, the drill floor carried a new tension. Boots struck mats, Velcro straps tightened, magazines clicked into rifles. Avery Holt stood at the center, not as a visitor, but because Chief Hale requested she address the corridor incident. She stepped into the tape-marked space. No clipboard, no fanfare. "Yesterday wasn't about a fight," she began. "It was about space. How you manage space determines whether situations escalate or dissolve." She demonstrated controlled redirection of force using Sergeant Raynor. Movements were precise, clinical, almost imperceptible, guiding weight and momentum without aggression. Every Marine watching, even Mercer, Cade, and Kincaid, could see the truth of her method. She didn't name names, or reference past disrespect. Her skill spoke for itself. Chief Hale confirmed the consequence. Article 15 review will follow. All three of you will be accountable for harassment and misuse of training gear. The room absorbed it without fanfare. Relief, quiet but palpable. Avery turned to Celeste Moreno, presenting her with a worn foreign patch. "Hold out your hand," she said. "This isn't for now. Grow into it." Celeste's fingers curled around the fabric, eyes wide with the weight of responsibility. The moment silently transformed the room. Respect, Avery demonstrated, doesn't need applause. It doesn't humiliate. It manifests quietly, revealed through posture, steadiness, and action. The Marines who once mocked her now adjusted their own stance. Younger Marines learned without words. The unit shifted imperceptibly, subtly, but indelibly. As the corridors emptied and rifles returned to racks, Avery walked toward the exit, calm, measured. Chief Hale observed, grounded, letting the silence speak. She never mentioned rank again. She didn't need to. Celeste Moreno, later that evening, held the patch behind her name tape. She hadn't earned it fully yet, but the responsibility mattered. Avery's lessons weren't about recognition. They were about awareness, about shaping space and people quietly, profoundly. Some victories don't echo. They stand in silence, altering those who witness them. Avery Holt's authority, humility, and quiet strength reshaped a room, leaving lessons that would last far longer than any words spoken aloud. If this story resonates, remember, courage is not always loud. It can be quiet, steadfast, and deeply transformative. Subscribe to Military and Veteran Stories to honor resilience, humility, and true courage. Share where you're watching from and which moment stayed with you. Strength comes in many forms, sometimes quiet, sometimes loud, but always earned.